Welcome. Hi, my name is Deana Rohlinger. I'm the Associate Dean for Faculty Development and Community Engagement in the Colleges of Social Sciences and Public Policy at Florida State University. I'm so pleased to have with me today to talk about her award-winning teacher, Dr. Kerry Fang. Dr. Kerry Fang is a recent award winner for the College of Social Sciences Excellence in Teaching Award. So thank you, Kerry, for joining us today.
Thank you, Deana. And I'm so honored to receive this award, and also want to have a shout out to all my colleagues in the Department of Urban Regional Planning. I have learned so much about teaching from all of them, so want them to consider this is a award to all of us.
And it is, we're one of the top programs in the country for urban and regional planning. So excellence in teaching and research, of which you've also won that award. But today, let's talk a bit about your teaching. Tell us a little bit about how you approach teaching.
In a philosophical sense, my teaching philosophy is really about project-based, diversity embraced, and community engaged. So the way I approach teaching is really to think about how students learn. Like, they learn not by you dumping all the information onto them. It's really about them applying what they learn in the class into something, into some project, and they go through the learning by doing process, and that is how exactly they eventually learn something. They return the knowledge. So that's where the project base coming from. And then our society nowadays is becoming more and more recognizing the diversity, and I want that to be an essential element of my classes. So there are diversity topics being introduced in the class, and when I do the projects, students form teams, and I try my best to make the team diverse. One of the example that I do this is I actually developed a international collaborative course in the college that have a partner with Higher School of Economics in Russia. And in that class, my student would team up with their international peers, so diversity in the team. And then they would do a project that is a comparative study between the economic development issue in the two countries. So another diversity piece in the subject matter, and also project-based again. So I think that's a really good example. Like, through this, students are able to function in an international team and to engage with a diverse issue, and they are becoming more and more culturally competent. And lastly, community engagement is really coming from my discipline as an applied discipline. In my discipline, what we really care is that what we can do for the community, what we can do for the public. So we actually, during the teaching process, we already are thinking about that. We are already partner students with the communities for the project that they do in class. Many of them these projects are actually working with the local communities or a community in the student's hometown that they care about and they have connection to. One of the local partner that I have is the Domi Station, which is a local business incubator. Take the student there. They would talk to the director, they would talk to the members at Domi Station, so they learn from the practice of the community. And then they observe what's happening there. They look at the spatial layout at the business incubator and how these different spatial layout are able to accommodate the needs of different types of entrepreneurs and different types of co-workers. And they help with the practice. They can give suggestions to how to change the program, and they can organize events for Domi Station. So they actually are learning from the community, getting connected with the community, and immediately provide value to the community. I think that's really, really helpful and motivates students, and also help them in their future career. Like, once they graduate, this is the way they function. And while they are still in school, we can already help them to do that transition. And these are the philosophy. And in a more practical sense, the way I structure my classes, for example, for a 1 hour and 15-minute class, I would have 3 learning points. 3, no more. I experimented. I wanted to do a lot, but doesn't work. No, 3, no more. And then for each of these learning point, the best way they learn is through some sort of activity. Well, sure, there can be some lecture, like short 5-10 minute lecture, and then followed by an activity that they can actually apply this thing. And there are a variety of activities that I have used, like traditional discussion or role play, game, debates, mock policy sessions, all mock community meetings, all those type of things. And if I combine all these different type of activities throughout the semester, I think that's the best way. Like you can always keep them engaged and challenged. And this is a model that I have followed. It works really well.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because I think people would be surprised how hard it is for us to limit how much we're putting in a given class. It would be so. Every time I struggle with my class thinking, oh, but I want them to think about this and learn this and expose them to this, and it really is a skill, an important skill, prioritizing by class and by semester. What is it that I can actually do? Well,
Right.
and that's just wonderful. I don't know if folks realize how urban and regional planning, how much entrenched that is within community, and the importance of that diversity component, because you have to deal with different kinds of actors, and they have different interests in trying to figure out how do you help these groups find the middle and make important change. Tell us a little bit about your approach. How did you come up with this approach to teaching?
There's a combination of things that I do to arrive at where I am today. Of course, I would read things. Like we have wonderful colleagues in education, and they study this. They pour a lot of time into study how people learn, and we can learn a thing or two from them. So I read the literature, read the books, try to learn from that. And also, as in the beginning, when I shout out to my wonderful colleagues, I directly learn from my colleagues. I remember during my first semester here at FSU, I would come to my colleagues and say, can I sit in your classroom? And of course they said yes, and they welcomed me into their classroom. And I learned how each of them, a variety of different ways, how they approach teaching, depending on their style, depending on their particular group of students, depending on the subject matter for that class, for that particular class session.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I have learned so much from each of them, and I have incorporated some of their approach into my class. I sit with them to discuss how can we improve our teaching. And in my department, we also have the peer evaluation for teaching. So for each semester, there'll be colleagues come sit in my class, and they observe what's happening, and they do an evaluation. I see this not only as a formal evaluation process that I am required to do, but also as a great learning opportunities. So after each observation, I would sit down with my colleagues, and we again will discuss what they see in my classroom, what they think I did great, what are the things they think that can be further improved. So that is another approach. And then, of course, I experiment, I fail. There are terrible things, terrible experiment that completely goes out in my classroom, and I change them. It's a risk to experiment, but I think it's very important, because what's really important is not how great you are today, even if you are great today, but student body is changing. The situation, the community is changing. The whole situation is changing. I think what's really important is a willingness to keep learning, keep adapting, and experimentation is an important component of that.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true. And I've certainly had my fair share of epic failures, so I'm with you. Tell me a little bit about students. How do you know when they're learning? I mean, I think people think we just look at grades, and it's so much more complicated than that. It's really this interactive process, and it's hard to get your pulse on the students all the time. What do you do?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a question that all of us struggle with over time, and I think one of the immediate feedback you can do is you observe them, you look in their eyes, and you can see if they're excited, they're bored or they fall asleep. The way I do is I have a lot of activities planned in class. So when they do activities, when they are in their smaller groups, I would go from group to group and observe how they are engaged in the smaller group. And if there are a student that is not engaging in the process, I would nudge them a little bit. I would, at least what I can do is to nudge them and say, hey, what do you think? Try to encourage them to speak. What's better if I know something about the student? Like say if the student is working as an internship for some agency, I can say something like, oh, I know that you work for this agency and what's your experience there? Speak to this question we are discussing. I think this is even better because you are making the connection. Like students are not engaged because they sometimes don't see the connection between the question you are posing and their personal experiences in their life. And if you know something about them and you help them make the connection, they become more engaged because now they see the value in the question connected to them, and they see what value they can provide to his or her small group. I think that's another good way to intervene immediately. And then of course, throughout the semester, informal evaluations, ask them, what are the activities that you feel you can mostly engage with? What are the activities that do not engage, that's boring? You ask them and then you can make some adjustment for the remainder of the semester. And then finally, of course, the assignments. If we set up the course in the way that each of the assignment we have are actually assessing an important learning objective of the class, then when you have your assignment, not to have a huge assignment at the end of the semester, because that's kind of too late, but have the assignment distributed throughout the semester. Then at each step, when there's an assignment and we look at their submissions, there are signs that we can see if they're engaging, if they are learning, and if not, something needs to be changed. And you might want to take some risk and do more experiment to make that change. I think those are the ways that I do to try to evaluate and make adjustments.
So tell me, what's your favorite part of teaching?
I think it's the co-learning experience. Like over the years, I don't know if I have taught my student more or they have taught me more. I think probably they taught me more. The students are great and they come from a variety of different backgrounds, and many of them also have some professional experiences, and also the way they learn. They bring out of their life experiences and their professional experiences into the class with them, and I can learn so much from them. And also observing how they learn over the semester, over the program, how they are willing to challenge themselves, how they are willing to reinvent themselves. That is an inspiration to me as well. If my student can do this, I can do this. I can reinvent how I teach. I can keep improving myself. And also at the end of the day, I am myself. I have one certain background. I have one life. I have one professional trajectory that I have chosen. I'm very happy with this, but there are a variety of different types of things. There are many different backgrounds of people. There are many unique life experiences my students have, and there are distinctive career and professional trajectories that my students choose after they graduate. And by being connected with them, I got to experience some of those things through them, and I am very grateful and forever in debt to them for those great experiences that I got to experience a piece of from them.
Yeah. So last question for you. What would be one piece of advice you'd give a new teacher, a new professor?
Actually, I have two.
All right.
I have two. I think the first is most of us as a new professor, we come from a research background. So before we do any teaching, what we are familiar with is research presentation. So it's very common for a new professor trying to approach the class as a research presentation, either subject, but overall the structure is a research presentation. And that never worked because in a research presentation, you talk for the majority of the time and you talk at a high abstract level because your audience are the people who have also studied this question for many, many years with you. That's not the case with the students. Students, they don't know what you're talking about if that's the way you talk. So it has to be completely different how you structure your classroom from the way you're so used to structure a research presentation. I think the sooner we realize that, the better we can adapt to a new mode and to structure the classroom in a way that is more accessible to the students. And as I talked before, the way I structure is 3 learning points with activities planned for them. And the second advice I would give is I would say very, very few people are master teachers from the beginning. I know I am definitely not. The first time I teach, it was a total disaster. And I know many other fabulous teachers, it's the same, like the first time they taught, they are not this fabulous. I maybe there are people that are born master teacher, but the majority of us, it's not the case. It's really a learning process. So if the first time you teach it didn't go that well, I want everybody not to be discouraged because that happens to all of us. It's really a process. It's really a learning curve. And I also mentioned before, there are so many ways that you can learn. You read the literature, you read books, you talk to your colleagues and directly learn from them, and you experiment yourself. It's really teaching is something that you can keep experimenting, keep experiencing, and then you are much better. And FSU actually has resources for us. FSU support us. There is a Center for the Advancement of Teaching, that they have programs, they have reading groups, and there are people there. They can assist you. So I would say keep learning, keep doing it, and everybody can be a great teacher.
Right. Well, thank you, Dr. Kerry Fang, a 2-time College of Social Sciences and Public Policy award winner, first for research and now for teaching. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us about teaching.
Thank you.